Hi guys, welcome to Raymaf Studio. We will talk today and show you Dune, the 28mm Skirmish game. I'm here with John from Crow Industries and our buddy Will,
Hi.
also from Crow Industries.
Cool,
And introduce us to the game.
So this is a very fast-paced, reactive and proactive sort of skirmish game. You only use 5 models, and we've decided that to onlookers it's probably quite boring. But when you're in it, it's got a very kind of chess back and forth feel. So we're hoping to break that down for you so it all sort of makes sense. We're going to start off talking about the anatomy of a card and how a character works in the game. As I mentioned, there's only 5 characters that you use each. This will be a leader of some sorts, which will either be a generic officer from one of the 4 factions, or one of the characters. So the 4 factions in the game are House Atreides, House Harkonnen, the Fremen, and the Sardaukar. Each character will have a corresponding card that will have all the stats you need for them. So ideally you won't need to have the rulebook out when you're playing. All the information you need will be on the cards in front of you. So you've got the name of your character and a corresponding number, which we mark on the back of the bases just to keep track of who's who. Then you've got your movement stat, and then you'll have a series of actions that you can perform. The boxes next to them, you place a dice in them, but we'll show you how that works when we get to a turn sequence. And then you've got your wounds at the bottom. So as you take damage, you mark these off. Once you become injured in a game, you flip that over, and your stats can change, and there can be modifiers in here as well. And you've got another set of damage boxes, which will be marked off. And as you complete those, you are then killed and effectively removed from play. So our characters, you will see, they've got a dash on either side of their base. And this is to indicate their front arc. The only effect this makes to a character is if they're being attacked or an action begins within their rear arc that causes damage to them, it'll do an extra point of damage. So in this case, if our Harkonnen had moved past that line and done the attack, it wouldn't do the extra point because it didn't begin there. However, if he'd started his action behind, it would do an extra point of damage. Each character also has an engagement range, which is 1 inch from them. So this is the range where they can make attacks to each other, and it will affect how they interact with enemy models for doing attacks, what kind of attacks they can do, and also if a model begins with an engagement range of a friendly model, when they're chosen to activate, their highest dice is reduced by 1. And this is called interference. So this is where their friends have kind of gotten in the way of their fighting styles, or they've got to be careful of hitting each other. So it means it stops players clumping their warriors up in these close, tight knife fights. Although Sardaukar are immune to this rule because they're bullies, frankly. So the part of the game that allows you to undertake actions is you've got these 4 that you can perform. Each character only gets to perform 4 actions throughout a turn. And what you do is at the beginning of a turn, you'll roll 4 dice. And we'll do that here for this Atreides warrior. And then we assign those to these given boxes here. This Atreides warrior is having a good day. This is quite a good roll. So we can place our dice in any of these boxes. So I'm going to drop the 6 in attack. I can drop a 6 in defend, 4 into defend, and a 2 into reposition. And we'll talk through the significance of that now. So when it's your turn to activate, and it alternates back as 4, as you'll see when we do a quick demo in a moment, if I choose this warrior to activate, I have to use an action indicated by its highest dice. So if it only had 1 6, I would have to do this action. However, because I have 2 6s, I have the option to do either of those. So when you do spend a dice to perform an action, you pop it up on the table. In this case, it's an attack. I can either do an attack action, which is on the quick reference sheet, or you can always swap out for a generic action, which is either a move or a bash. And we'll go through those in a moment. Once you've worked your way through these spending them, I then have to spend that one next time this character activates to either do a defend or a generic action. And the time after that, it would have to be a defend because that's their highest. and then down to reposition as the last action, or again, one of the generic actions. So next thing we're going to have a look at is the actions themselves. So the first ones we're going to look at are the generic actions. Regardless of what dice you spend on what action, you can always use a generic. And there are two of those. There's the move and there's the bash action. So in this case, we're going to have a look at the move action. So we look at our character's card. We have to spend the highest dice. In this case, for this Atreides warrior, it is a 6. So we take that off. To complete a move action, you can move your character, whatever your current move stat is. So our Atreides warrior is uninjured at the moment, so he's got a move stat of 4. And I can move him anywhere within that space of 4. So I'm just going to pop him over here. And that would be his action complete. It would then go to my opponent, who would then get to do an action in response, as everything is back and forth.
Let's go.
So our second generic action we're going to have a look at is a bash action. So our Atreides warrior here is next to activate. His next highest dice, and only dice left, is a 5 on reposition. He doesn't want to do that, so as I said, you can use any of these on a generic action. So we're going to do a bash instead. So a bash attack is like a unrefined attack action. So what we do is spend our 5. We then select our target, who has to be an enemy model with an engagement range, which is 1 inch of your model. So this Harkonnen is our target. We can turn to face, and as long as they are within our front arc, that is fine. So we're already where we need to be. We then do what's called an opposed roll. So the 5 that we'd spent for this action, we put down. The Harkonnen then has to spend their highest dice, and then both sides will roll a d3 and add their results. So I'm going to roll for the Atreides, and Will is going to roll for Harkonnen. So it's a d3, so my 4 turns into a 2, and I add that to my result.
And my 1 is a 1.
Giving him his total of 5. So in this case, the Atreides warrior has won the opposed roll. So the Harkonnen will take a single point of damage, which he will mark on his card. If the result had been a tie, or the Harkonnen had won the opposed roll, nothing would have happened, and the action would have ended. So the next action we're going to have a look at is an attack action. So starting out in this situation here, we have a Harkonnen leader, and his highest dice is on the 6. So it's his turn to activate. He's going to spend his 6 to do an attack. So to do an attack action, the first thing you do is turn to face your target. His target is going to be this poor Atreides warrior here. You can then do a move of up to 2 inches. And as long as that move ends him within engagement range, he can complete the action. If he was outside of 2, he wouldn't be able to do that action. So you can pre-measure this in this game. So he's done his move. He can then do his attack. It's an opposed roll, so he's already spent his 6 for the attack. The Atreides has to spend his next highest dice, which is unfortunately only a 2. And then, as with our previous action we looked at, is an opposed roll, so they both have the d3. So I'll roll for the Atreides. So Will has scored a 2,
Which becomes a 1.
giving our Harkonnen leader a total of 7. And I've scored a 5, which for a d3 is a 3, which is only a 5. So the roll is won by the attacker. He will immediately cause 2 points of damage on the Atreides warrior. So it's more effective than a bash attack, and you get to do a move as part of it. And as with the previous opposed roll, if the result had been a tie or the Atreides had won, nothing would have happened and the action would have ended. So the next action, we will have this Sardaukar here. His highest dice is on his defend, so he's going to do a defend action. So with this action, the first thing you do is you turn to face your target as long as you are in engagement range. So he is within 1 of this Fremen warrior. He can then turn to face. We'll spend our 5 to perform the action, and the Fremen will have to spend his highest dice to try and block the attack. And then we have our opposed roll. So I'll be rolling for the Sardaukar.
And I'll be rolling for the Fremen.
Okay, so here we have a tie. So both 3s, it's for a d3, so these turn into 2s. And as we've seen for opposed rolls so far, if it's a tie or the defender wins, nothing happens. However, for the purpose of demos, we'll assume the Sardaukar won the roll. What gets to happen then is he gets to push the target 2 inches directly away, and he then gets to increase his next highest dice by 1. So his 4 he could use a little later, bumps up into a 5. And this represents him pushing his enemy away and getting into sort of a locked stance, ready to engage later. So next action we're going to have a look at is a feint attack. We're going to have a go with this Sardaukar here. And this represents him kind of like ducking around and getting into a better position or dodging the character. So what we do is we've got to start within engagement range, so within 1 inch. We then spend our highest dice on feint. So we have a 4. The Fremen has to spend their highest dice to defend. And then both sides will roll a d3. So high rollers here, so both scoring enough to add 1 to our result. So a total of 5 for the Sardaukar and 4 for the Fremen, so that would be a success. To complete a feint action, once it's successful, you place your model anywhere in base contact of the target facing them. And like I said, this is a great way to move around the board, to get around targets. And as with the other opposed rolls, if it had been a tie or the Fremen had scored higher, the action wouldn't have happened. So the last standard action you can perform is a reposition. So this Fremen here, after he's had this Sardaukar feint behind him, he wants to get out of dodge. And luckily his next highest dice is on reposition. So he can spend his 4. You choose which model you are doing your opposed roll for a reposition, and in this case it will be the Sardaukar. We'll have to spend his 2. Then we have our d3 rolls again. Ooh, so we've both rolled hot on this one. So we convert these to d3s. So both are 3s added to our results. So the Fremen scores a 7 and the Sardaukar gets a 5. So the action goes off. With a successful reposition action, the model gets to move 2 inches and they can go anywhere inside of engagement ranges. Normally you can't perform a move action if you begin your turn within engagement range. So this is a great way to move around the combat. And once again, for an opposed roll, if the result was a tie or the defender had won, the action wouldn't have gone. So what we're going to have a look at now is how a character becomes injured. So we'll resolve the end of an attack action. So this Fremen has assigned their 6 from their attack, and the Sardaukar is the defender. They've put their highest, which is a 5, down. We've rolled our d3s and add the results. So from this attack, the Fremen scores a total of 8, and the Sardaukar gets a 6. So he'd take his 2 damage from the attack, which would finish off his damage boxes. In a turn, when you are all boxed out, all your extra dice are immediately removed, and your card is flipped. You don't have an engagement range anymore for this turn, and you can't be acted with or acted against. It's just a bit of dead space on the table. This represents them kind of on the knees, they're kind of recomposing themselves to get back into the fight. And then at the start of the next turn, this character then has fresh dice rolled for them. But as you can see, their movement stat has gone down from 4 to 2. And they've got some nasty penalties here. So what will happen at the start of this character's turn? They'll roll their 4 dice. And even with this really good roll, they'll have to subtract 2 from each of these to a minimum of 1. So our 2 goes down to a 1, our 6 goes down to a 4, and our 5s go down to 3s. And then they're able to assign these to the boxes. So less effective when you're injured, and sometimes your actions actually change as well, what you're able to do, depending what kind of fighter they are. So once characters are in an injured state, and they're on the verge of dropping off here, they're going to potentially then be removed from play. So in this hypothetical, our Fremen here is about to use a attack action, and then we will hypothetically finishing blow, so he'll do 2 points of damage, which will finish off this Sardaukar warrior. What happens then, once all your boxes are filled in your injured side, dice are removed again, and your character is effectively downed. So they are replaced with a downed token, which have also been dubbed jam tokens. This now doesn't have an engagement range. It can't attack. It can't be engaged with. This guy is bleeding out. He's having a really bad day. But what characters can do is, if this Fremen is here when he activates next, and there are no enemies within his engagement range, he can spend his highest dice to perform a special generic action, which is called a coup de grace. And that will give benefits. So there is a generic coup de grace action, and there are 4 specific ones, one for each of the factions, and you can choose which you use to give you whatever benefit you need at the point in the game.
So the other important part of coup de grace action is in scenario play, it scores you the highest points possible for the objectives. You usually score points for a mission, for wounding a enemy character, and then usually double the points for actually finishing them off.
So we're going to have a playthrough, a quick demo game. You normally use 5 fighters, but we're going to do 3 each, just to explain the mechanics a little more easily. So I'm going to be running House Atreides. So I have my leader, and I have 2 warriors, who I've got the cards to represent that. The difference with each faction is they get some kind of faction bonus, and they get a special coup de grace action. So House Atreides have brutal defense, which is when they complete a successful defense action, they can also do a point of damage. So as well as pushing the enemy away, bumping one of their dice up, they also damage the enemy as they're pushed back. And their special coup de grace action is form up. The model that is coup de grace is removed from play. And then all friendlies within 4 can be moved up to 3 inches towards the target. So it allows them to kind of lock ranks and get into a better position after capitalizing on a kill.
Okay. And I'll be playing House Harkonnen today. Now, House Harkonnen's special rule is actually a punishment, where when things start to go wrong, they start to leg it off the board. So when they start to get wounded, they start to back away towards your board edge. Their special coup de grace, however, is called Brutal Slaughter, and that is when they coup de grace an enemy unit, you can pick another model within 4 inches, and they raise one of their dice by 3, and it superpowers them up as they try to one-up each other on the battlefield.
So here we go. We have our 2 forces ready to go. We have our Atreides set up. We have our Harkonnen. There's a section in the book for setting up and deploying. One of the things you'll notice as well for gaming is use a very small area. In most cases, you don't even need terrain on the table to make the mechanics work. A lot of it is about the cut and thrust of your fighters interacting with each other. A bit of terrain, it makes things a bit more interesting, but you can totally play it on a space this small with no terrain on it. So ideal for kind of coffee table, quick games between other game systems if you want to. And as I said, you'd normally have a deployment system where you take turns deploying fighters back and forth. However, in this case, we've just thrown them down just to go through a quick demo of how all the mechanics work. So, as mentioned earlier, one of the things you want to keep in mind is being outside of friendlies' engagement ranges. So, we both make sure we're outside of one of each other. As the fight kicks on, we'll probably find that won't become an option as we're trying to move around each other to do as much damage as possible. So first thing to do for a turn before we roll for initiative is to roll our dice for each of our fighters and assign them to our chosen stats. So if I talk through my thought process for my leader, and then we'll roll up all the others. So I already know that he's going to get a +1 on both his defend actions. He's also got attack and a reposition. But this is first turn, and we're probably going to spend our highest dice moving into position. So I might not want to put any 5s or 6s on my attack or my good defenses. So I'll roll my dice and see what we get. So I'm almost certainly not going to want to put my 6 on either of the defends, because I can't get higher than a 6. However, I could bump both of these up and then have a sacrificial 1 on one of the other actions. So I'm going to put that on my reposition, because I'm not too bothered about that one. I'm going to put a 6 on a defend. I'm going to bump the 4 up to a 5 on my defend. And this gives me a few options while we're playing. And then we'll roll up for the others. One of the things we found while playing this game is the decision you make now, you may be cursing yourself for in 5 minutes' time. But you aren't to know that. That is the curse of hindsight. So this guy has lots of options because I've rolled multiples. So when it comes for him to activate, I have to take my highest dice, which could be any of my 5s, which for this character at the moment could either be a reposition, a defend, an attack, or in fact I could spend any one of those for either of the generic actions.
Whereas I'm suffering from analysis paralysis, as is standard for these kinds of games. So I'm just going for a wide spread. Now you'll see from looking at my cards, I've got a lot more attack actions. That's because Harkonnens like to beat people up, so we represented that by making them hyper-aggressive. However, for the opening turns, that usually then puts me at a disadvantage because I don't know what to do. And I'll make that a 3.
When Harkonnens become injured and they flip their stat card, they lose one of their attack actions, and this represents them being sort of bullies. So as the fight goes on, they get a bit more worn down, they're less interested in the fight, they're more about repositioning, and maybe not getting beaten up quite so badly. So we've both got our dice assigned. We'll then roll a d6 for initiative. It is Will.
Harkonnens first. Option I did not want to happen. So I'm going to go first with my Harkonnen Warrior 1. Now his highest dice are both 4s, so I'm going to choose to spend his reposition because I want to keep the attack for later. So I'm going to spend that to do a generic move action, and I'm just going to hurl him straight at the Atreides in front of him.
So as we mentioned, we can do pre-measuring in this. So I'm going to jump in with Atreides number 2. So this is the guy that has all the options with his 5s here. So as I said for pre-measuring, I can check if I'm in charge range. I don't think I am, but we'll have a little look. So as for an attack, we can have a 2-inch move, and as long as that ends within 1 inch of the enemy, we can perform it. So we know we're not in attack range this turn. So I'm probably going to have to do the same as Will and spend one of my 5s to do a move action. So I don't think I need to reposition this turn, so I'll spend the 5. And I too will do a 4-inch move. I'm going to come in at a flank and maybe make myself a bit of a nuisance. And then it's back to the Harkonnen.
Now, the sensible thing for the Harkonnens to do here is move the line up. However, Harkonnens are not sensible. So Harkonnen Warrior 1 has smelled blood in the water. He sees there's an Atreides in front of him. And he's going to spend his 4 to do an attack action. Now, I already know, just from eyeballing that's going to be within my 2-inch. Is then going to put me within an inch. So I am in engagement range. So he's going to turn to face, move towards, and then John will have to spend his highest dice to defend against it, because I'm making an attack action. So it becomes an opposed roll.
And here I have 2 dice that are the highest, so I have an option of which one I can spend. I'm going to use the defend one, because this then means I can spend that in a moment for an attack and snot him back. So for our opposed roll, this is my base 5 against Will's 4, and we add our D3 results. So I'm adding a 1 to mine.
And I'm adding a 2. Which gives us both 6, which means nothing happens because the opposed rolls were equal. And then the turn will pass back to the Atreides.
So the information on your cards is not a secret. You can glance over your opponent's cards at any point. At this point, I realise I have a 5 on an attack with this guy. The model he's engaged with is on 2s, which makes him nice easy pickings for my attack action. So my response to this nasty black rubber wearing scumbag will be to do an attack action with a 5. Will have to spend one of his 2s. We then add our D3 results.
Uh-oh.
Unnecessarily rolling hot here, so I add 3 to my 5.
I'm only going to be adding a 1.
So that is definitely a success. So as part of my attack, I then get to do 2 points of damage to the Harkonnen, taking half his fresh card side off. Poor baldy bad guy.
Why not? Let's keep this going. He's got an attack action left. It's a 2 versus a 2, because I can see the 2 over there. Let's just make this all about the opposed roll.
We had our D3s.
Ah.
So mine goes up to a 2.
And mine becomes a 1, which means I lost the roll and nothing happens. Poor baldy
supremacy
guy.
in this corner of the table.
This isn't how it's supposed to go.
It's definitely not how it goes in the movie. So, from this example, we've just seen 2 warriors going at each other in a fight. What tends to happen is there'll be the flow of back and forth and other models interacting. So we'll see a bit of that now. What we'll find is we both have a model each that now has no dice assigned to it. So if someone goes in for an attack against them, they're in a very bad place. It's my turn to
It's back to you.
So I'm going to jump in with my leader, who's by here. I'll have to spend my highest dice, which is on defense. I intend to use it for a move action. As mentioned, I'm going to put myself in a position to bully this nasty guy in a follow-up action. Over to the Harkonnens.
Okay, so Trixie Harkonnen time. My Harkonnen Warrior 2, his highest dice is a reposition. I want to spend that to do a move. So you can spend the 5. And then this one can move 4 inches. And he's also going to come for the flank. But on the opposite side. Because we're not quite copying each other, I swear.
So back to my leader model. I have 2 5s, 1 on defend and 1 on attack. I will definitely be spending the attack. I can do my 2-inch move towards an enemy. However, I'm going to try and stay out of engagement range of my friendly so it doesn't mess me up later in the turn. As long as I end within an inch, I can take my attack. So my attack was on a 5.
I have no dice. So I can make an opposed roll to this. However, D3 cannot beat a 5. So I will roll it in vain, but no, I cannot beat a 5. Oh.
That's just rubbing it in.
Yeah.
So when you have no dice to do your part of the opposed roll, you only get your D3 results. So throwing all your actions out with a character and then leaving them in the open leaves them really open. And this kind of represents your fighters having overexerted themselves, getting carried away too early in the fight, allowing other people like this very clever Atreides to capitalise on that with his 7 against the 1 result. So that will be 2 more damage to that Harkonnen warrior.
Which will take his final 2 wounds off. So I flip his card to the bad side. He can now no longer be targeted this turn. He has no engagement range, and my faction rule kicks in. So the nearest friendly model then runs away 2 inches towards my board edge. And it's going to be the one who I just spent an action moving forward, is now going to go, ooh, I don't quite like this, and back up 2 inches.
So in earlier points of the game, that's a massive hindrance for the Harkonnens. It slows them down. However, we found later on in the fight, it actually becomes an advantage because it allows them to drop back and maybe get themselves out of a situation where they can be attacked by the opposing force. So again, it's initially disadvantage, but there's a lot of positions where you find yourself in a better spot, even moving into the rear arc of an enemy before they can react. So move over to the Harkonnens.
It's back to me. So now my nice Harkonnen guy, who's just backed up, has gone, actually I reckon I can take on 2 Atreides. And he's going to spend his 4, which was a defend action, but he's going to spend it to do a move, and he's just going to try and recapitalise, regain some of the ground he's lost, and just move up.
Not a fan. So assess in the turn, we have my 1 guy out on the far side who is all out of dice. My leader's got 2 left. 1 of them is on a decent result and 1's quite low. And then we have this guy over here who's fresh. And then Will's force looks pretty similar. So I don't want to exert myself too much with the leader because I know Will's guy still has all his dice. And again, taking advantage of your opponent having no dice to defend from your attacks, it's really good. So I don't want to put myself in a position for that. So I'm going to jump in with a guy that hasn't fought yet. His highest dice is on a reposition. I'll spend that for a generic move action. I'll just get him into sort of fighting range. Ready to mix it up in a minute.
Perfect. So when we come back to the Harkonnens, my blood screams to move the leader up. However, I'm going to try and be a little bit more tactical. Like we've said, information on cards is open, so I can see John's warrior there has a high 4. I've only got 3s left. So I'm actually going to spend one of the attacks on him. So he's going to turn to face that warrior. He's going to move up to push himself into engagement range, like so. And then we'll make an opposed roll. But what I've done now is I've robbed John of his 4. So I'm happy even if this roll doesn't go well.
And we had a D3s.
So I ended up losing the roll. But like I said, I'm happy because I know he can't attack me back with an attack action now.
I am less happy. So I've just been robbed of my 4 on an attack action here, so I'm less than pleased. However, I know the Harkonnen up against me only has 1 dice left, so I can be equally as petty and use one of my defend actions on a 1, which I will do, and do that against this guy here. So we do a opposed roll. I can't actually win this because a D3 on top of that is going to total a 4, and then even if Will rolls badly, it will also equal a 4. We'll roll it up anyway. So
First hot roll of
I
the
do
game.
manage to bump up to a 4 against his 6. So the defender has scored higher for the opposed roll, so nothing goes off. However, it has robbed this guy of doing an action against me. What we found in games is, even though your characters are wounded and have low dice results on them, it's quite handy to use them to kind of just bump into better fighters, to kind of interfere with them and take their 5s and 6s away from them to stop them using it against your warriors that are possibly less damaged or in a more important position. So Harkonnens.
So my Harkonnen leader has had enough of watching his subordinates make absolute fools of themselves, and he's
They're
going
all
to show
sacked.
them how a real warrior fights. And he's going to spend his 5, because he can choose between his 2 5s, to do a reposition, but we're going to make it a move action instead. So he's just going to spend that and move 4 up, and he's planning, spoilers, on taking the Atreides leader's head.
And then going to jump back with our fighter we just did here. So I've got a 1 on defend. So I will spend that here. And he's going to go against the same guy. This time, however, his target has no dice, so he'll only get his D3. The dice have betrayed me.
I managed to roll a 2.
So 2 to a 2 is a tie. No action happens. Back to Harkonnens.
Get robbed. So, my Harkonnen leader now, he has his 5 is his highest dice, so he has to now make an attack action, or he could spend it for a generic, but why would he want to do that? So he's going to spend his 5, and because I can pre-measure, I can see my 2-inch move will take me into engagement range with his leader. So I'm going to move like so, and then I will make my attack action. So it then becomes an opposed roll.
I'm
John's
gonna
going
drop
to spend his
my
5, and then we roll our d3s. I roll a 5, which becomes a 3, for a total of 8 versus your 7.
It's not good. So I've been attacked, and that will do 2 points of damage against my leader.
And then over to you, sir.
So I only have 1 dice left. It is on a reposition, which is probably not going to do me much good at the minute. So I'm going to use it for a bash attack. However, Will's got 3s.
So, because I've got 2 3s, it works exactly the same as in the action phase. I can choose which of these 3s I want to spend. I obviously want to keep the attack, so I'm going to spend the one that's on defend.
And once again, I can't really win this roll, because even if I get the highest result on a d3, and Will gets the lowest, it'll still be a tie. But the idea being, I've sort of robbed him an action. Thanks, dice. Even rubbed it in.
Yeah.
So that is me out of dice, and I didn't manage to get that bash action off either.
And then my last action is going to be with the Harkonnen leader, who's going to make another attack.
I have no dice to defend with, so I'm going to have to just use my D3 and hope I roll, I don't know, a 20 on it or something.
So this is another good example of what we were talking about earlier. I rolled the lowest possible, but because he had just the opposing D3 roll, I couldn't really lose that, so he's going to take 2 more points of damage.
And that, unfortunately, will then cause my leader's card to flip over, because he's taken all 4 points of damage. If he'd had any dice at that point, it would have been removed from play. And as Will's already shown us, once a character becomes injured, they have no engagement range for the rest of that turn. However, that is both sides' dice spent, which sets down to a new turn. So that was a single turn of the game. Most scenarios will be 3 or 4 turns. So although a lot happens in a single turn and it's very back and forth and you're trying to keep the advantage, there's not a lot of turns to the game. So, start of a new turn. We then roll our dice up for our characters again, and then we'll roll for initiative, and then we're good to go. So what we'll do is we'll show an example of our poor, newly injured Atreides leader, who's now got some minuses going on here. So I'm going to roll up my dice. Ooh. The 6s are normally really good, but they're about to get downgraded. So you decide where they go before you add your modifiers. So I kind of want to keep these nice and high. So what I think I'm going to do is drop the 6s into the defense, and then they only bump down by 1 to 5s. However, my 4 on attack is now a 2. My 2 on reposition is -2, but you can only ever go down to a 1. When you've got pluses as well, you can't exceed a 6 either. And then we roll it for the rest of our fighters. So take it away. That's a good roll.
Oh. Slightly less good. My nice wounded one rolled 3s and 4s, so they all become 1s because of the -2s.
As we said, being injured can be absolutely crippling, even when you roll quite well. However, using that character to bump into enemy models that have got better dice can deprave them of actions. So sometimes it's not a case of getting your action to work, it's just a case of robbing your opponent of dice so they can do actions later on.
Analysis paralysis is real.
And on camera.
And on camera.
So, as we've said a few times, it's public knowledge for what you have scored on your dice. I'm feeling quite good with my dice, especially glancing over to the comparison
I'm
of Will's.
feeling a lot less good with my dice.
And then the all-important initiative roll.
Oh no.
Only just. So,
Bad news bears.
well, it is, but I now have the initiative and I have to make a decision, which can be worse. So, I now have a few options, so let's have a look at these. So, our warrior here, who's up against this injured Harkonnen, I've got some really high results here, and he has 1s and 2s. However, am I in a rush to do that fight? Because I'm probably going to win it, and if he hits me back, I'm almost certainly going to rebuff his attacks. Or am I better off jumping on a fight that is going to be a bit more even? So again, there's a lot of decisions to make. And the decisions you made assigning your dice 5 or 10 minutes ago during a turn may absolutely rob you later on. But the power of hindsight. So taking in inspiration from my Harkonnen opponent here, I'm going to go full bully mode. I'm going to go with our warrior over here. And we're going to wail on this injured guy. So I'm going to take my 6. I'm going to go in for an attack.
I get a nice 2.
Highest dice are 2. I don't even think we need to roll out D3s here.
No, because even if I get a 3, it's still lower than your base value.
So showboating all the way with your Atreides. So 2 points of damage on the already injured Harkonnen here.
Like so.
And then over to the Harkonnens.
My Harkonnen, however, is going to be slightly sneaky. And he, the injured one, he's got lots of low dice. John has lots of high dice. I'm going to get him to spend those high dice so my good characters can actually do things this turn. So he's going to spend his reposition, because they're all 1s, as a bash. But he's actually going to declare the target as the Atreides leader because they're both in his engagement range. So he's going to turn to face that one, and then we make an opposed roll with our highest dice.
He's going to rob me of one of my 5s against the 1. Again, there's not much point rolling the d3s because the result will be either way. I'll be able to rebuff the bash attack. However, it takes this 5 off my card. Which I am not pleased with. In response to this, what shall we do? Let's go with this guy. He's feeling pretty good about himself with 2 5s and 2 6s. So I think we're going to get stuck in. I'm going to do my attack on a 6.
Cool. And my highest to spend is also a 6, which was on reposition.
So this is going to be down to the d3. I'm feeling pretty good about this.
Oh, you should have.
So that will go to a 2.
And mine became a 1.
So 8 against 7. That is a successful attack from the Atreides on the Harkonnen.
So I will mark 2 wounds off the bottom of Harkonnen Warrior 2. And then he's going to swing back at you, I do believe, sir.
Boo.
Because his highest dice is then a 5, which is an attack, and I really want to spend that before he takes it off me. So he's going to spend it to do an attack against the Atreides warrior who just attacked him back.
My logic for placing dice earlier is I had 2 6s, so I put 1 on attack. So if I had the advantage, I could do my attack. And the other one I put on reposition, which is an action I was less bothered in using. So I can now spend that to use it to kind of try and block this attack. So I'm starting with a 6.
Uh-oh. So even though I rolled really well, his 1 pip higher causes me to lose the attack. So nothing happens.
This is definitely not what happened in the movie.
No, I remember the movie going distinctly different, John.
Different palace. Different palace. So I'm now in a position where this fight here between these two seems to be going my way. My dice are a bit higher. However, as we mentioned in the earlier turn, you don't necessarily want to resolve a fight because it then leaves this character in a position where they don't have enough to act with. So my decision now is, do I keep wailing on this guy or do I jump about and see what else I can do? I think I'm going to bully this injured guy.
Please don't turn me into jam.
I intend to turn you into all the jam. So I'm going to use a 6 on my reposition, but I'm going to spend it as a generic bash attack.
Cool. And I've got multiple ones to choose from, so I'm going to spend a defend to maybe try and get a cheeky attack in later.
So again, there's not much point rolling the d3s, because my total is going to be a minimum of 7.
And so mine is a highest of 4.
So my bash will just do a single damage on that Harkonnen, putting him down to 1 box left.
Now, if he gets another attack off on me, that dice is going to be wasted regardless. So let's do a little Hail Mary, and he's once again going to be Trixie, and he's going to swing for your leader again.
Which is going to rob me of my 5 on my leader, which is not good, because this guy hasn't acted yet, and I see some big numbers over there. So, I can do the opposed roll. I'm not sure there's much points.
Sure. Yeah. I got a mighty 4.
So again, the action doesn't go off, but it does remove my 5, which in some cases can change the flow of battle, even if you don't get to do your attack. It's one of the game's mechanics, was we made that a D3, so there is an amount of swing in there. However, in some cases, you just have too much advantage for it to
if you set things up right, you can remove the chance entirely.
Yeah.
Which was the goal.
Yeah. Okay, so looking back at our situation here, I noticed that my Atreides boy here has a couple of nice high numbers. However, his target is on some fairly low numbers here. So I'm going to spend one of my 5s. They're both on defend, so it doesn't really matter. I'm going to go with a defend. And then we're going to add our D3. Ooh, not good. Rebuffed. So my 6 against the 7. So my defend action does not go
I
off.
did really want you to show off your faction roll, I swear.
Lies. The Atreides faction rule is when you do a defend action with them, as well as pushing the target back and bumping my next dice up one higher, it'll also do a point of damage, which would have pushed this guy just shy of the tipping point for injured.
And in fact, I'm actually going to capitalise on that and not let him make it another action by having that warrior spend his free. It's probably not going to win the roll. In fact, it won't win the roll, but hey ho. So I got a 4 to his 6, 7 even, I can't count. So my attack fails and nothing happens.
This warrior is now all out of dice.
As is my warrior up there. So it leaves our leaders and your side warrior.
So, I have options. My leader is not only injured, he's up against Will's leader, who has lots of dice, some of which with horrible high numbers there. So I think I'm going to hang on to him to use some of these low dice to try and counter the offensive that's on the way. And we will jump to our bully in the corner that is going to try and finish off this poor Harkonnen. So we're going to spend our 6. We are going to do it as a bash instead of a defend, because it's a generic action. We can add our D3s. Yay.
I got a 1.
So 7 to 1, which will do the 1 point of damage for a bash attack.
Now, my warrior has been reduced to 0 wounds on his injured side, so he becomes jam.
Jam, 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 jam.
So we replace the model with a jam token, or a downed token if you want to use the official terms.
Who wants to use the official terms?
And then it is over to me. This is not good, but my Harkonnen leader, I was hoping he would have attacked me by now, because my highest action is a defend. So, I'm going to spend the defend as a bash against your leader, sir.
And I will have to spend my mighty 2. Oh dear.
Also, oh dear, but good enough. So you take 1 pip of damage. Ow.
So I've already kind of written off this interaction. This is not going to end well for my Atreides leader here. However, this guy over here has a dice left. There is a downed token within engagement range and no enemies within engagement range of him. So I can spend a dice for a generic coup de grace action, and I can remove this, which will score me lots of points at the end of the game. So having coup de grace the injured Harkonnen there, I'm now going to use a coup de grace action, and it is going to affect the enemy models within 4. Their highest dice is reduced by 1, so this guy doesn't have a dice, so he's not affected.
And my Harkonnen leader's 4 becomes a 3, which becomes much more manageable for the Atreides leader over there.
So as well as scoring points by cutting the throat of this downed Harkonnen, I've also hopefully made things a little easier for our leader, who's about to be mugged by this guy.
Oh, and mugged he will.
By Will.
Oh yeah. Mr. Harkonnen leader then is going to spend 1 of his highest dice, which are both frees are on attacks, so he's going to make a swing with a 3 against the Atreides leader.
I'll spend my 1.
Comes 2. So I got a grand total of 5 versus 2, so take 2 pips of damage there.
This is not looking good. I'm all out of dice, so I can no longer act this turn, so it's all
I, however, am not all out of dice. So, I'm going to spend his free to do an attack action versus the leader, but again, there's no opposed roll needed, because the minimum I can get is a 4, and the highest John can get is a 3, so he'll take 2 more damage.
which will turn my poor leader into
jam. I've got 1 more action spent. Now, normally I would then coup de grace. However, my Harkonnen leader is within 1 inch of an Atreides model, so he can't perform a coup de grace. So in that case, I'm going to have to do a reposition, because it's the only action he can do. It becomes an opposed roll versus that Atreides warrior.
I only have my D3 because I'm all out of dice.
So I did manage to get enough of a roll to succeed, and I'm just going to bring him around 2 inches, and he's just going to bring himself over here, like so.
Which means we're both out of dice.
We are both out of dice.
We are both down a fighter. And that is the end of turn 2. Which means we are now rolling our dice for our characters again. I'm feeling I'm in a fairly good spot. The leader's dead, but I'm going to take that as a positive because that's potentially a promotion for someone else after the fight. Meanwhile, Will's guys, one of them has taken 2 damage.
Yeah.
Otherwise
So
untouched.
Harkonnen Warrior 2 has got 2 damage left, which means he's kind of in the danger zone, because John only has to get 1 successful attack through and he can wipe all my dice off.
So let's roll up for this guy in the corner. That's a solid okay roll. I'm going to pop these here. Now you can really have a proper think about where you're going to place dice, or if you're in kind of the panic of the game, you can kind of throw them down and hope for the best, because even the best laid plans will probably betray you at some point in this game.
Oh boy, do they. Okay. I, on the other hand, my Harkonnen leader has rolled quite nicely because he gets quite a few positive mods. So I'm going to chuck a 5 as a reposition. I'm going to bump this attack up to 4. This attack also up to 4. Oops. And leave the defend on a 2. And then this one, a nice wide range of dice, thankfully. So let's go 6, 6, 3, and a 2.
Brutal.
The all-important initiative roll.
Yeah. High rollers on this table.
So good. So, looking at our options. This Harkonnen has lots of high dice. My opposing Atreides does not have quite so good a roll. So maybe I don't want to wail in on that. The thing I do want to prevent is this nasty man getting a coup de grace on this. So as long as I can get someone within an inch of him, I can limit his effectiveness. So what I'm going to do is this guy here is actually going to spend his attack. He's going to spend it against this guy instead. So I can drop my 4 here. I can move my 2. And I can get here. So even though I've ended in the back arc, I didn't begin the action wholly within there. So it won't do the extra point of damage for a rear strike. But as I said, I was more hoping to limit what he could do here. And I might get lucky and still do the 2 damage. So opposed roll. Not so much. However, I did take the 5 away from the Harkonnen leader.
And this is what we would call bad. I'm not in a very good situation here because my Harkonnen leader now is kind of damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. So let's make him damned if he do. He's going to make an attack action versus the Atreides that's currently in his rear arc. So he's going to spend his full. He's going to turn to face, like so. And then we will make an opposed roll on 4s. So we're both just on the D3s. Got 5, which becomes a 3. So I beat you, sir, and take 2 points of damage.
2 damage. Well, not a fan. So I'm going to jump to my Atreides warrior over here. My highest dice is 5, and it's on an attack. I'm going to come piling in. This will be in the rear arc, as the action began there.
I have to spend my 4 to defend myself with this. Uh-oh.
So my total is an 8.
And my total is a 7.
So I'll do my 2 damage for an attack action. However, it was in the rear arc at the beginning, so it'll be 3.
So it's become a very big swing the other way all of a sudden. This is not good. So, I think my Harkonnen warrior needs to help his boss out here. He's going for that promotion. He's going to spend his 6 to do an attack action. Again, he can move 2, which is going to put him there. so. Spends the 6 versus John's 2.
Yay,
There's
2.
no need to do an opposed roll here because, again, the highest John can get is only a 5.
And that
So
will
he'll
do
take 2 damage.
2 damage, which will turn him into injured. So I remove all dice from him. We flip him over. And he can take no part until the start of the next turn. And he has no engagement range. So that has robbed me of a dice for this character this turn. However, I now have my guy with 3 dice. And Will's leader has left with 1. So I'm going to do a bash attack with my 3.
I spend my 2 to defend myself with this.
Ooh.
There we go.
Rebuffed. So attack doesn't happen. And then it's back up the Harkonnens. It's getting intense.
Yeah, my options are much more limited now, however, because I put all my high dice on attacks. And I can't attack the wounded one anymore. So he's going to have to spend that 6 and turn it into a move, because he's no longer engaged. So he's sort of going to move 2 this way, and then 2 like that, to try and get behind that Atreides slowly but surely. And then it's over to you.
So I'm going to try a bit of a sneaky strategy here. I'm going to go with my defend. I'm going to go against the guy that just came at me here. So I spread my 3.
And I defend myself with a 3.
So this is all down to the opposed roll now. That's not good. So the action is nullified and nothing happens there. So the hope there was because it was a defend, not only would it have bumped my 1 up to a 2, but it also would have pushed Will 2 inches backwards, which would have meant his last action he wouldn't have been able to spend to do anything aggressive to me, and it would have kept him out of position.
Yes.
Sadly,
So-
he defended too well.
My Harkonnen warrior now is going to make a bash against that warrior. Unfortunately, I didn't quite have enough movement to get any rear arc, so I spend my 2 against that Atreides warrior, and we'll just make an opposed roll. 3 to 4, so his bash is rebuffed.
And that is us both out of dice at the end of turn 3. So what we'll do is we'll call this one here, and we'll work out scoring for this scenario. So we've done this one as a skirmish mission. Each of the scenarios will have different ways of scoring. In this scenario, it's all about doing damage to opposing fighters. So in this case, Will has scored against me. I have a warrior that is uninjured, so there's no points for him. He has injured one of my Atreides warriors, who is worth 1 point. And he has downed another one, who is worth 2 points.
For a grand total of 3 points.
So 3 to Will.
Yes.
In return.
Whereas John, in return, both of my warriors are uninjured, so they're worth 0. However, I had a warrior that was downed, and then he's killed it. So that killed model becomes 4 points. So John has scored a total of 4. So even though my warriors were actually in a slightly better health state compared to John's one, I've actually lost the scenario by 1 because he's removed that 1 jam token from the board.
And this would have been very different if I'd left Will's leader open to a position to coup de grace my downed fighter earlier. So by jumping in and preventing him doing that, I've stopped him scoring an additional 4 points, which would have put it at 4 to 7, which would have been a Harkonnen win.
Boo.
Hey, what are these guys?
So the other factions in the game, as well as our Atreides, who have their defensive sort of advantages, and the Harkonnens that are big on attack, we have the Fremen. Their special ability is when they complete a feint attack, they will do a point of damage as well, which represents them ducking around and weaving and sort of knifing under ribs as they're fighting their opponents.
And then up the stairs we have the Sardaukar. And now the Sardaukar are coordinated killers, which means they ignore the interference rule. You can kind of bunch them all together, just march them slowly and unstoppably towards your opponents. And their special coup de grace lets them move friendly models around, which is very useful.
Ta-da!
We did it!
Hey!
Hey!